All right, so did anybody have a chance to read this? A few people did.
I think everyone had a chance.
Had a chance to read. That's all I'm asking. Did you read it? I'm not. Yeah. So you're free to read or not to read. Okay. So here's the thing. So why did I have us read this, or why did I put it out there and make you feel guilty for not reading it, or whatever? One more thing not to do. So last time we talked about ethics. I think it was last time. And one of the points of ethics and doing ethics is to figure out what's the right thing to do. And there are different ethical situations, whatever it is. You go back in time, you can kill Hitler, and then you're not going to have the Holocaust. That's an ethical dilemma. The trolley problem, that's sort of an ethical dilemma. There's a lot of ethical dilemmas we have. And sometimes people, when they're faced with an ethical dilemma, they will say, God told me to do such and such. Have you guys ever heard people say this? I've heard this before, where especially maybe if it's something that's not super clear, somebody prays about it, and then they say, well, God told me to do whatever. And God bless you. God told you to do that. Yes, I can do it. And so what sort of opinion should we have of that? Should we just believe the person and say, oh, God told you to do that? That's awesome. Well, what we get in this dialogue from Plato is one way to approach something like this, or a few different ways maybe to approach this. Because what we have here, and in this dialogue, this is written by Plato, who was a student of Socrates. And what you get in most of Plato's writings, which are kind of cool because it's not just, here's what I think about something and it's dry and whatever. He's actually giving us conversations. And some of them are rather heated. Some of them, he makes fun of people. There's all kinds of stuff happening. And so that's one of the cool things about Plato's writings, is that it's not just what he thinks, but he puts us into a play, or you could think of it a movie or something. In fact, a lot of these were intended to be acted out and sort of a dialogue or something between people. And so Plato is Socrates' student, and so a lot of what happens in Plato's writings is that he will put Socrates in some sort of situation that may have happened or may not have happened. And in this one, there's actually a lot of subtext or context happening here. This takes place in Athens, and Athens was different because we're talking about 5 centuries before Christ, and most places would have a king or something, and that's how they would rule. But Athens was a democracy. Now, are democracies good? Or would a democracy be better than like a monarchy?
Yeah,
what do we think? Okay, yeah, how come?
Because it's letting more people make decisions than just one person who could be bad at it.
Okay, yeah, so if you have a bad king and he's just telling you stuff, it's like, well, we might want to do something different. You say no?
What if you have a bad people?
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They have immoral people.
So if the majority rules, is the majority always right?
No. In fact, most of the time they're not.
And so if you have a bunch of people, so like a kindergarten class, does a kindergarten teacher say, hey, let's vote on what we do today?
No.
And whatever everybody wants to do, that's what we're going to do. So we're just going to have recess every single day, all day long. That's a democracy, isn't it? And so we would say, oh, no, in that sort of situation, you don't want a democracy because they're not really old enough or smart enough or wise enough to rule themselves. And one of the things that Socrates says, and Plato believes this, is that democracies are the worst possible way of setting anything up. And they would also say, actually, monarchs are really bad too. And the ideal situation, which he talks about in the Republic, is that if philosophers rule, because philosophers are wise and they know how to make good decisions. And so it should be that philosophers are running everything. And so that's sort of the subtext of what's happening here. So in this, we have a dialogue between Euthyphro, who literally, what his name means, and we don't know this because we're English speakers, but if you knew the Greek, and when somebody heard this, literally what Euthyphro means is right thinking or correct thinking. So this is sort of like an allegory, like in Pilgrim's Progress, where he calls people by certain things like, you know, Christian. He's obviously the Christian. Faithful. Guess what faithful is? He's faithful. And hopeful. He's hopeful. And so in an allegory, you give the characters a certain quality. So Euthyphro literally means right thinking. And so we have Socrates and we have Euthyphro. And so the setting here, in fact, I just want to read a little bit of this to kind of get us into the setting and what's happening. So at the very beginning, so if you go to page 1, and again, the print is so tiny, but you guys got young eyes and you can actually see things like this. So on page 1, Euthyphro and Socrates, they know each other from the past or something. And so at the top you see Euthyphro saying, what new thing has happened, Socrates, that you've abandoned your stomping ground over here and now you're here, you're at this court, which is basically where they are. So the setting, or where do they meet? They meet at court. Okay, it's a king's court, but this is a legal place where you would go and you would have cases heard, and maybe you're suing somebody, and so it's basically a court where they're at. So, you know, why are you here? Socrates, like, I'm here because someone's indicting me. This guy named Miletus. And Socrates, you see about halfway down here, and I'm just going to highlight just a few of these things because we get what's happening here. So Miletus is charging Socrates, so Socrates has to go before the judge, and he doesn't know a lot about him, but Socrates about halfway down says he's probably somebody wise. And having seen how I in my ignorance corrupt the people of his generation, he is coming to tattle on me to the city. Okay, so you notice how he says he's probably somebody wise. Do you think Socrates really thinks he's wise? You think so? No, he's being ironic. And you get this irony all throughout here. He said, well, he must be really smart because he understands what I'm doing, and I don't even know what I'm doing. So he must be a lot smarter than me because he's the one who is accusing me. So why is he being accused? Go down at about, in these numbers on the left here, these are kind of standardized ways of showing where we are in this text. So about B down here, he says, I am a maker of gods, and because I make novel gods and do not acknowledge the old ones, he indicts me for their sake. So Socrates is being accused basically of what would be called impiety, that he is not taking the gods seriously, and he's inventing new gods. He's coming out. He's not worshiping the old gods properly, and so this is why Socrates is there. This guy's accusing him of impiety. Okay, switch to page 2 at about probably about halfway down. Socrates says, so what exactly is your suit, Euthyphro? Are you defending or prosecuting it? So is somebody accusing you of something, or are you accusing somebody of something else? Euthyphro says, I am prosecuting. Who are you prosecuting? A man whom by pursuing I will again appear crazy. But why? Are you pursuing somebody who flies? Like, are you pursuing some person who's out there? Like, I don't understand what's happening. Who is it? And a few lines down, my father. Father? You fantastic fellow. And you hear the irony here again. It's like, good for you, buddy. You're prosecuting your father. Yeah, that should happen every day probably, right? Absolutely. But what's the charge and what are the circumstances? Can you imagine taking your father to court? And yes. It's like, okay, most people aren't going to do that. But so what's the charge? Murder. And check out Socrates, Hercules. This is kind of 5th century BC swearing, okay? He's taking the name of one of the gods in vain. Hercules. This would be like some other expletive you might say. Hercules, wow, okay. Like your dad killed somebody? I think most people, and this is key. You might want to underline this phrase here. I think most people wouldn't know how to act properly in such a case. So in other words, what's happening is we have an ethical dilemma. You know, kind of like the trolley problem's an ethical dilemma. Like, my dad committed murder. Would I turn him in if he committed murder? I don't know. Let's see what's happening. So, wow, what happened? Surely and so Socrates says, surely the person killed by your father is one of your relatives? It must be, since you would not prosecute him for murder on behalf of a stranger. So, like, did he kill somebody? You know, did he kill like your uncle? Like, yeah, that's something you want to be involved in. But if it's somebody else, do you really want to betray your father? That seems pretty harsh. It's ridiculous, Socrates, that you think that it makes a difference whether the man killed is a stranger or a relative, and don't think it necessary to watch only for this, whether the killer killed legally or not, and if it was legal, to let him go, and if not, to prosecute him. Is Euthyphro a deontologist like Kant or a utilitarian like Mill? It's the right thing to do, right? The duty, yeah. So he's very deontological, isn't he? It's like, man, if my father committed a crime, I turn him in. Like he might get executed for it. I don't care. It's the right thing to do. That's what I'm doing. All right. So what happened? So at the very bottom of page 2, the victim, as a matter of fact, was a certain laborer of mine, and when we were farming in Naxos, he was employed by us there, so some guy who's working for us. Drunk and having been provoked by another one of our household, he slit the man's throat. Ugh. So my father bound his feet and hands, threw him into some ditch, and sent a man here to Athens to inquire of the interpreter of religious law about what should be done. But during that time, he paid no attention to the bound man and neglected him as a murderer and thought nothing of it if he died too, which is in fact what happened. Since he died of hunger and cold, his bonds before the messenger returned from the interpreter. So this guy was in his care. He didn't take care of him. He died. That's why both my father and my other relatives are angry, because I'm prosecuting my father on behalf of a murderer. Okay, like, is that a clear-cut situation, what you would do in that situation? Or is it like, okay, so that guy was a murderer. He probably is going to be killed anyway. So my dad, like, threw him in a ditch, and he died. So it wasn't like your dad was protecting Mother Teresa or something, you know, and let her die. It was like, this guy was a murderer. So is it really that wrong? I don't know. It seems like it's at least a gray area. So I don't know, okay? Because at the bottom, kind of where the E is, they say it's unholy for a son to prosecute his father for murder, not really knowing, Socrates, how the religious law stands with respect to holiness and unholiness. So in other words, like a lot of people are criticizing me because I'm so determined that I'm doing the right thing when there seems to be a lot of different opinions on this. But by Zeus is another expletive, right? So if you guys need to swear, just say Hercules or Zeus, and then you'll be fine. Unless they are really real and they zap you or something, then you might not want to do that. But by Zeus, and this is a key point here. Do you, Euthyphro, think you have such accurate knowledge about how the religious laws stand, about both piety and impiety, that with these things having taken place in the way you describe, that you are not afraid that prosecuting your father, you might be committing another impiety in doing so? So you get what's happening. It's like he's saying, I'm going to prosecute my father. Like, that seems a little iffy. I don't know if I would do that. It's like, no, I know absolutely I'm doing the right thing. And he says, I'm doing the pious thing. And he says, that's who I am. So, and check this out. This is awesome. So Socrates, a couple lines down. Then it would be excellent for me to become a student of yours. Marvelous Euthyphro. So do you think this, when he says marvelous Euthyphro, he's like, whoa, you're awesome. You're like prosecuting your father, and you are so certain that you're doing the right thing. You're marvelous. Or do you think there's some irony here?
I think he's kind of being
Very sarcastic, right? It's like, whoa, you're awesome. And here's the thing. Socrates is being accused of impiety, and it seems that Euthyphro knows what piety is. So man, if I'm going to learn from somebody, I want to learn from you, because you are so certain that you know what piety is, that I want to learn from you, because I'm going to be facing charges of impiety. So if I can figure out what you know and you can teach me, I'm going to be in pretty good shape, because I will learn from you and it will be great. Is this what he really means? So I'm going to become a student of yours. So look at page 4, and this is where it starts. So Socrates, who wants to do the right thing, comes across somebody who say, God told me what to do, and I know what the gods want. I know all about piety, so I'm going to do the right thing. So here's the key question here. So tell me, what do you say the pious is? And what is the impious? Because if I can figure that out, Euthyphro, I'm going to be in good shape. Then I can defend myself and I'm not going to die. And a lot of times when people read this, they're like, okay, this is another one of Kersey's stupid thought experiments. Like, whatever, a waste of time. I'm just on the treadmill trying to figure stuff out. It doesn't really matter. But does it matter to Socrates? Yeah, he's not just throwing out this idea and then he's going to go have lunch or something. This is life and death for him. Because if he cannot defend himself, he's going to be executed. And he's going to die, and he's going to lose his family. He's going to leave his family without a father. And this is a huge deal. So it's not just an academic exercise. This is his life and death. And so he really needs to know how to figure this out. So Euthyphro, please tell me, what is piety, so I can figure this out. And so we have the first definition of what piety is. And this is Euthyphro's first definition. What is piety? Well, now, I claim the pious is what I am doing now. Okay? So what is pious? It's what I'm doing. So I am prosecuting my father, and that is what piety is. Is this a good definition of piety? No. Why not?
It's in the sense of inherently pious.
Yeah.
Everything he does is right.
Yeah, and everything I do is right. Yeah. And so we know sort of what pious looks like, but do we know what it is? This would be like if we're out playing golf, and we're playing golf, and I'm saying, and you tell me, I really like sports. Like, what is sports after all? Like I'm playing Socrates. What is sports? And you say, what we're doing now is sports. Is it right? I mean, is that sport? Yeah. But are there other sports besides golf? Yeah, I mean, there's wrestling, there's basketball, there's baseball, there's all sorts of things. And so it really doesn't help us, because all he's done is sort of just given us an example of what it is. So Socrates is like, nah, dude, that's not going to work. Let's try again. And so he says, you basically told me what it looks like, but you haven't told me what it is. So at the bottom of page 4, so remember that I did not request this from you to teach me one or two pious things, but to teach me from the form itself by which everything pious is pious. So, all right, so let's try again. So on page 5, Euthyphro let's see, down a little ways. Well, okay, so what is pious? All right, so here we go. Here's another try. Well, what is beloved by the gods is pious, and what is not beloved by them is impious. Okay, so what the gods love. Yeah, that seems right. Okay. Is there a problem with this definition? If you think in terms of the Greek gods, what do you think?
The Greek gods don't get along.
Don't get along, do they?
No.
Because we have, and he uses this example, so is what the gods love's pious, what they don't isn't, or aren't. And so Socrates, again, do you catch the irony here? Excellent Euthyphro, or Euthyphro, I always say that wrong. So excellent, does he really think he's excellent? Nah. Yeah. With this, you have answered in a way I was looking for in an answer. Whether or not it's true, I don't quite know. But you're working on it. That's really good. So was it about halfway down here? So wasn't it also said that the gods are at odds with each other, and they disagree with one another? And then if you look over on page 6, about halfway down, we're going through this quick. So Socrates says, okay, so if it's what the gods love, then we've got a problem, because there was this one god who had a son, Kronos, and then he had a son, Zeus. And, all right, so what do we know about these guys? So Uranus was or Uranus, I always feel silly saying that, okay? So this god, there's a different name for him here, Oranos, about halfway down here. So he's sort of the grandfather. And does anybody know what Kronos does to him? Because he doesn't want him having more children, so he castrates his father. And that's that. Okay, so Kronos castrates the father. So from Kronos' position, that's good. How about his father's position? Is that good? No. So one act of doing that to his father is both good and bad. Like, one of them thinks it's good, one of them thinks it's bad. And then Kronos, like, we know what he had. This guy was crazy. So he's got children. And what does he do with his children? Remember, he eats them, because he doesn't want his children to grow up and take over as a god. So he eats his children, but they don't quite digest, and so they're just stuck inside of him. That's kind of weird. And so Zeus shows up, and Zeus attacks his father so that he kind of throws up the children, and then he overtakes, and so Zeus becomes more powerful than Kronos. So if you look at this, and if our definition is it's the stuff that gods love, well, good grief, in this one story we have something that some of the gods love and some of them hate. So is this a good definition? No, this isn't going to work either. So it's like, so Socrates is going to point out that there's basically a contradiction, because you can't say that it's what the gods love, because some gods love one thing and then other people hate that thing. So this isn't going to work. So again, remember what we're trying to do is Euthyphro is saying, God told me this thing. So like, whoa, cool. I want God to tell me stuff. So how does this work? And so he's trying to tell them what the pious is, but he's just not getting very far with this. Okay, so at the bottom of page 7, we're still trying to figure this out. So the very bottom, Euthyphro. So Euthyphro says, I, for my part, affirm the claim that, so he's gonna fix this a little bit. He's gonna say, okay, so actually, it is what all of the gods love. So in other words, he says, yeah, you know, kind of the whole stuff that these guys did, obviously you're not going to agree on that. But there are some things that all three of these are going to agree on. Like, let's say a triangle has 3 sides. Do you think all 3 of those would agree on that?
Maybe, I don't know.
Like, yeah, maybe they would say, yeah, we know that. We all agree on that. So Euthyphro is going to say, okay, so piety is the thing that all the gods agree on. And then, so, okay, well, let's go with that. So top of page 8. So Socrates says, we'll soon know better, my good man. So, okay, so you're saying that it's what all the gods love, all right? So here's his question, and this is a key question. Is the pious loved by the gods because it's pious? Or, you might want to circle that word or is it pious because it is loved? Okay, so what he's saying is it's pious because it's loved by the gods, or do the gods, not the dogs, the gods, the gods love it because it's pious. You see the difference in that? So think of it this way. In Genesis, what does God creates, and then what does he say? It is good. So God says, looks at everything, says it is good. Does God say that because he creates something? Let's say you made a table. You weren't really sure about the table, but when you're done with it, you go, oh, actually that's a pretty good table. Like it has legs on it and it's pretty even. Well, that's a good table. Is it that sort of recognition? Or is it God saying, since I'm creating, I'm going to create this quality called good. And so if you want to know what good is, look at my creation, and that is good. He's defining good. Okay, here's another way to think of it. Let's say that there's a plant, whatever, in creation. This little plant, and let's say it's a foot high. So this plant is a foot high. So is it a foot? Do we know it's like a 1 foot plant because one, God measures it. So he takes out a yardstick and he measures it, goes, okay, that's 12 inches, so that's a foot. Or does God use this as the measurement? See the difference in that? It's like in one option, he says, okay, how big is this plant? Okay, let me take out this measurement of a foot. Okay, it's a foot tall. Or does he say, I'm going to define what a foot is? And then he creates that. Can it be both? Or is it like just one or the other? It can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. What do you think?
It can't be both, because if you're measuring it, that means you already have something to measure it with. Whereas if you're using it as a definition, that's the source of what it is.
Yeah. And so what Socrates does to Euthyphro at this point, he goes, okay, so it's what all the gods love. Okay, cool, awesome. So which is it? Is it good because they love it and they say, this is going to be loved? Or do they look and go, oh, that's pious? Okay? And so this is known as Euthyphro's Dilemma. And even if you Google that right now, I mean, don't do it right now, but when class is over, if you Google Euthyphro's Dilemma or look up YouTubes on it, you're going to find tons of videos on this, because this is one of the most famous dilemmas in philosophy. And so we're not going to spend a ton of time, but just to note that essentially what is happening here is that Euthyphro is going to say the gods love it because it's pious. And so if he goes that route, is that a good definition? Because remember, we're trying to understand what piety is. So is that a good definition? Well, not really, because all this is, so this is just giving us an example of it. This is a contradiction. And all this does is give us a quality. It's sort of like this one. It's kind of like saying fire engines are red. What is a fire engine? Well, a fire engine's red. Does that tell you what a fire engine is? No. Not really. It's a quality of it. And so,
red, sometimes they're green.
Yeah, there's different colors. Yeah, and so all he's done is said, I'm trying to figure out what is piety. He goes, well, it's what the gods love. Well, okay, but the gods love a lot of stuff, probably. So it doesn't really tell me anything more about piety. So anyway, so jump down. So page 9, about halfway through. So about halfway through here. So it's likely, Euthyphro, that when you were asked what is the word, or what in the world is the pious is, you did not want to reveal its nature to me, but wanted to tell me some one of its qualities. That the pious has this quality, it is loved by the gods, but as for what it is, you did not say it at all. So So I am dear to you. So if I'm dear to you, don't keep me in the dark, but tell me again from the beginning what in the world the pious is, because I'm about to be tried for impiety, and I have to defend myself, and you have not given me any help, basically, in defining what this means. Okay, let's keep moving forward. So on page 10, towards the bottom, then see what follows this. If the pious is part of the just, we must, it seems, discover what part of the just the pious is. So actually at this point, Socrates is trying to help him and say, if you're bringing a case in court, is it better to say, well, the gods told me this was right? Or is it better to say, it was just for me to do this because of this law, that law, and that law? Which is going to give you if you go to sue somebody in court for something and you say, you know, they owe me $1 million. Why? Well, because God's told me they were not a very pious person. Or would you say that they destroyed my property by setting fire to my house and causing me all kinds of this, and here's a video of them doing it, here's the law that they broke, here's the evidence that it was them, which is going to get you better results. It's probably, yeah, it's like God's told me. Oh, God's told you? All right, cool. You get it. No, you have to build your case. And so Socrates is trying to help him. Okay, so here's what justice is. All right. So the bottom of page 10, Euthyphro says, okay, Socrates, that holiness and piety is part of justice concerned with attending to the gods. So circle that phrase. So it's the top of page 11. So, all right, so what we're talking about is attending to the gods. All right, so now he's trying a new one. Okay, so let's try our next thing here. Okay, so what is pious? Well, it's attending to the gods. Or another way of saying this is taking care of the gods. Okay, so this is his last attempt to do this. Okay, is Socrates going to buy this one? Probably not, is he? All right, so jump down page 11 towards about 2/3 down. And since piousness is attending to the gods, does it benefit the gods and make the gods better? Right? I mean, maybe that's why he's saying. Like, when I attend to my dog and I feed him, does that make him better? Yeah, if I take him to the vet and give his shots, does that make him better? Yeah, okay, so is that what we mean by taking care of the gods? Does it make them better? By Zeus. I don't mean that. Socrates, nor did I think that's what you meant, Euthyphro. Far from it. In fact, and so that's why I was asking what in the world you mean by attending to the gods, because I didn't think you meant that kind of thing. All right then, by what kind of attending gods are we talking about? Like, is it like me taking care of a dog? Well, no, not like that. The kind, Socrates, when slaves attend to their masters. Oh, okay, now we're getting closer. So a slave attending his master is kind of like us taking care of God. All right, okay, so we're moving forward. Page 12. Tell me then, best of men. And notice in here too, we're talking about a slave and a master. Have we heard of this in this story? Are there other slaves and masters? Yeah, like the one who was killed. A couple of them was killed, right? And another way to think of this is like a father and a son. You know, so a slave should serve the master because he's like above him socially. So it's also analogous, like how a son might take care of a father. Like, is this what we're talking about? And how would that fit into this story? Is there a son and a father in this story? Like a son who's accusing the father? Oh, okay. There's also this idea of Euthyphro the teacher, Socrates the student. So are you saying I should serve you as my teacher? There are so many layers in this story. It's like an ogre. There's all kinds of layers. Oh, yeah. Okay, or like an onion or something. Yeah. Okay, so page 12, down a few lines. Tell me then, best of men. Okay, here we go. And do you think Euthyphro's like when he says, marvelous Euthyphro, excellent Euthyphro, best of all men? Is he like going, yeah, I actually am pretty great, aren't I? I don't think Euthyphro is quite catching on to the sarcasm here, because like he's at the edge of a seat. It's obvious that you know, since you claim to have the finest religious knowledge, at least of any man. And as a matter of fact, Socrates, I speak the truth. Yeah, so like God told me, so I'm pretty special. So tell me, by Zeus, what in the world is the magnificent task which the gods accomplish by using us as servants? So if we're their servants, what's going on with that? And he talks about things like, everything has some sort of purpose. About halfway down. So what then about the many fine things that the gods accomplish? What is the key purpose of the labor? So a servant maybe plows the fields for the master, or brings in food, serves the master in some kind of way. So Euthyphro, about a sentence in, but I will put it for you generally. If a man knows how to speak and act pleasingly to the gods in his prayers and sacrifices, those are pious, and such things preserve both his own home and the common good of the city. So I'm going to pray and I'm going to give sacrifices. Okay, that's good. So down a little way, Socrates says, and sacrifices is giving to the god, while praying is making a request to the god. Is that how it works? Like, so I sacrifice to a god, and then I'm praying and I'm asking stuff for God. Is that how it works? He's like, yeah, basically that's how it works. Okay. Down a few lines, Socrates at the bottom of page 12. And proper request would be request for what we need from them, right? Yeah. And again, giving properly would be giving what they happen to need from us. Maybe. So what do the gods need from you? Well, what do you have that the gods haven't given you? Nothing. When you were kids, like third grade or something, and Christmas was coming, did you ever want to give your dad a Christmas present, and so you wanted to go buy him something that you know he likes? Some of us maybe have. So imagine you're like a third grader, you need to go buy your dad something, and you know it's going to cost $10. Where do you get that $10 from? Mom, or it's like, it's their money, right? It's like, so if you want to give mom and dad something, and the only place you have to get it is from mom and dad, so you take the money, you go to the store, and you buy them this thing, and you give it to them. What's their reaction? Like, yeah, thank you. I could have gone to the store and bought that myself, because it's really my money. And so is the kid, has he done anything, really? It's like, well, it's the thought that matters. Whatever. It's like, I was going to go buy this thing anyway. The kid bought it for me with my money. So what's a big deal? That's really nothing virtuous in that, necessarily, because it's my money and a transaction was made. And so Socrates says, is that what you're talking about? Like us giving things to them? And so about on page 13, down a little bit, we're almost there. What else do you think about, what else do you think but honor and admiration, and as I said just now, gratitude? So in other words, what's the whole point of this? What's the whole point? Okay, you're saying piety is attending to the gods and giving them stuff. Okay, what's the whole point of that? Because they already have the stuff. So if you get a sacrifice, they don't really need it. Well, it's because of gratitude. Okay, Socrates. So being shown gratitude is what's pious, Euthyphro, but it is neither beneficial to the gods nor dear to them. So in other words, the whole point of piety is just that you're a nice person. I think it is dear to them. It's dear to them above everything else. So the pious is, once again, it seems, what is dear to the gods. Okay, yeah, I think we're going to go with that. Socrates, are you tricking me, Socrates? Okay, so it's dear to the gods. So here's what Socrates says. Are you at all surprised when you say such things that your words seem not to stand still, but to move around? So in other words, you've come right back to what? To something you said previously. You're saying the same thing. And you accuse me of making them move around like Daedalus. Now, Daedalus was this mythical person who was able to make statues that were so amazing that they would get up and move around. And earlier, Euthyphro says, you're like Daedalus because basically you're making these arguments, you're making these words that move all around and I don't know what to do with them or how to take care of them. And so Socrates is saying, like, I'm so talented, I'm able to make your words move around and bite you in the rear end, okay? That's what's happening. So, like, are you saying that's what I am? Or don't you see that our discussion has gone around and arrived back at the same place? You remember, no doubt, that previously the pious and the beloved by the gods seemed to us not to be the same thing, but different from one another. Or don't you remember? It was like 30 seconds ago, I totally demolished this definition, and now you're trying to give it to me just warmed up in a different type of way. Is Euthyphro having fun with this? So, okay. So, a ways down here, so Socrates says, so either what we decided then was wrong, or if we were right, then we are wrong to think it now. So in other words, 30 seconds ago, we shouldn't think that, but now you're giving me the same argument again. So it seems. And so I love the way this closes. So we must begin again from the beginning to examine what the pious is, because I'm going to be standing trial in about, this time tomorrow, and I have to say that I'm not impious, but I don't even know what piety is, and you were the one who was supposed to teach me. So can we start again? Do not scorn me, but applying your mind in every way, tell me the truth now more than ever. Remember, you are what? You're the right thinker. You're the correct thinker. You know everything. Because you know it if anybody does. And you cannot be released until you tell me, because unless you knew clearly about the pious and the impious, there is no way you would have ever tried to pursue your own aging father for murder. Bazinga, he got him, right? So in other words, remember, you're the one who's doing this really ethically shady thing because you said it was the pious thing, but you can't even define what pious is. Yikes. So what do you think Euthyphro's thinking at this moment? It's like, I'm claiming to be pious, but I don't even know what, I can't even define what pious is. Is he on shaky ground now? Yeah, Socrates has totally destroyed him. If you don't even know what it is and you're doing this thing, but instead, or your aging father for murder on behalf of a hired laborer, but instead you would have been afraid, before the gods and ashamed for men to run the risk of conducting this matter improperly. And underline that phrase or circle that or something, put a star by it, because that's the core of what's happening. He is doing something that should be causing him a lot of humility. It's like, I don't know, it seems right, but man, I just don't know what's right. But what does he do? He just charges through and says, I've got this, and I'm doing it, and I'm the proper one to know what's happening. Top page 14. But as it is, I am sure that you think that you have clear knowledge of the pious and the impious. So tell me, great Euthyphro, or Euthyphro, how do I keep saying that wrong? Tell me, great Euthyphro, and do not conceal what you think it is. Please tell me, because I'm in big trouble. Here's what he says. Well, some other time then, Socrates. He probably pulls his cell phone out this moment, goes, I got a call. I got to take off. See you later. Because I'm in a hurry to get somewhere, and it's time for me to go. So what does he say? What a thing to do, my friend. By leaving, you have cast me down from a great hope I had, that I would learn from you what is pious and what is not, and would free myself from Miletus's charge, right? By showing him that thanks to Euthyphro, I had already become wise in religious matters. Okay, so if you look on, so we're not going to do this now, but so we're doing a test. It's going to be like a take-home or a open note, open book, open everything, open Google test, which will be up on Wednesday.